Hi, my name is Dennis Siri. I am Executive Director and founder of the New York City Independent Film Festival, Independent in Spirit, International at Heart, and this is the New York City Independent Film Festival Meet the Filmmakers podcast. Join us while we meet this year's filmmakers. Thank you. Bye bye. Okay, hi. Today we're here with Juliette Fairley, and welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Juliette Fairley, and I made the film Adult Children of the American Revolution, which was accepted into this film festival recently. Very excited about that. Thank you for having the film and selecting the film.
Oh, you're welcome. You're certainly welcome. Well, thank you for submitting it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a festival. All right. So I guess we'll start with, so what made you want to be a filmmaker? Was that a lifelong dream, or is it something that you did spur of the moment?
Well, this is my fourth film, and I started doing these films because I wanted to create roles for myself. And so the first three films were films for me, were vehicles for me to showcase my acting. This particular film is a little bit different. This is the fourth film, and it was really about telling my experience about with genealogy and my enslaved ancestors. And so I had a different mission and a different purpose with it. It wasn't so much about showcasing my acting as it was telling a story about my ancestors and my family history.
Okay, cool. Great. And how have you been making films?
Oh, I guess, I don't even know when I started. My first film was Mulatto Saga, which actually aired on television on a network as part of it was like a group of African American short films. And I don't remember what year that was, but it was probably 10 years ago.
Okay, so 10 years you've been doing this, 11 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. And you already said this fourth movie. That was my next question.
yeah.
And so where you are, is there like, do you have a group? Like, do you have a tribe of filmmakers that's your core group, or is it just whoever you find as you go along?
Well, you mean like in terms of this film or just in general?
Just in general, like, do you have a tribe of people that you say, this is my tribe, these are my filmmaker tribe, these are my filmmaking friends, or is it
Yeah,
just,
I have a lot of acting friends that do their own projects. So I would say that that's kind of my tribe is actors who are not going to wait for a role and they're going to write their own project and produce their own stuff. Like that would be my tribe.
okay, good, great, happy for you. All right, and you already answered what was your decision to make this particular film. I guess, and my next question is, what was the hardest part about making this film?
It was, basically, it was hard for me to accept that it was possible. I think I thought when I thought of the whole idea of the film, which was based on personal experience and based on true family history, I thought, oh, I can't do that. Could I do that? I don't know if I could do that. Like, it's like it was like this conversation with myself of, oh no, you can't do that. But it kept coming back, and I was like, well, maybe I could try, And so I didn't know if I could actually accomplish what I wanted to do, because it was the first time that I had background actors. Because in my other films, I didn't really have any background sort
Hmm.
of scene. So that was a little frightening to me. Like, how am I going to do the background? And I did have to kind of tone it down because in the original short that I had wanted to produce, there was going to be colonial era costumes, which was going to be a little bit more trying to recreate. So I kind of had to, that's all in the feature film, which I've written. But in the short, I just kind of had to keep it manageable. And so once I got over the fact that, yes, I could actually do this, and I spoke with Screen Actors Guild, and what I needed to do to make it happen, then I started to believe that yes, this is in fact possible. So I think the biggest struggle was my own self, my own doubt.
Yourself is always a worst critic to anybody. It's actually terrible what we do to ourselves. But anyway, okay, and what was the most fun part of this?
Oh, the fun part was being on set, with other creative people, with other actors, and it was almost like we were on a playground and everybody was having fun. The background actors were great. I mean, they were really into it. We had this problem where um, I guess someone had accidentally pulled the fire alarm, and so it set us back for a couple hours. Or they had accidentally set it off in some way. I'm not sure how, but it set us back for a couple hours, and I was afraid that people like that the background actors would just go home
Believe, yeah.
and leave, and they were very committed. They were like, no, no, we want to do this movie, And so it got, finally we got the fire alarm turned off and we were able to shoot. And they were so committed to their roles. It was great. And then the lead actors were also very, very committed to their roles. And so it just turned out so, I guess what was so fun was everybody's commitment to their characters and their roles. And we all just felt like children, putting on a play in the backyard or something.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, so, okay, I guess you're in the indie film world. So what do you consider success in the indie film world? Like, you're not necessarily in the indie film world because you want to go buy a mansion like Nicolas Cage or whatever. You're kind of doing this for a passion. So what would you consider success? Like when you look at something, you say, yes, that's successful. What would that be?
I think it's getting accepted into film festivals. Like that's the first level of success is if you get accepted, that's a victory because there's so many people submitting, there's so much competition. So if your film stands out and is even selected, that's the first level. And then I would think that and then getting it seen as many places, that's a success in and of itself because nobody makes a short movie for it to just sit there,
Right.
so that's another level of success is getting as many people to see it as possible. And then I think a third level of success would be winning an award. That's another level of success. And then another level of success would be the distribution. So if it gets picked up by a streaming platform or something. Um, and yeah, I feel like getting on the red carpet and promoting it is another level of success and visibility. And I think that those are all, I think just getting into this film festival, for example, is a complete success.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So if some like a nephew came along and said, "Hi, I'm 12 years old and I don't know what I want to do. I think I'm going to be an indie filmmaker." What would be your advice or your conversation with him? What would be
Well, I would say, first of all, write your script. What story do you want to tell? Let's sit down and write it. Hopefully he can write it himself. And then I would look at it and I would, kind of explain what things would be what things are filmable and what wouldn't, and I would kind of try to explain like some of the obstacles and maybe try to simplify it, and then I would say let's shoot it, and with your phone, with my phone, or and that would be the first level, would be to just actually tell the little boy to shoot it himself, write it and shoot it, and then edit it, and then invite your friends over and have them watch it.
all right? So you'd be supportive.
Yeah, yeah, and I would probably assist.
Okay. All right. Great.
And
That's
and
great.
they have like all kinds of, once you get into high school, they have ghetto film school. They have all different kinds of programs that kids can get into that are really helpful. I would suggest that too.
hmm hmm Okay. I mean, like that's my questions. Do you have anything you want to say or question or ask or anything? That's basically the end of my questions because you answer
Yeah.
them all.
Oh, thanks. Well, I just want to talk about my film and what it's about.
Sure.
So, Adult Children of the American Revolution is about my experience with genealogy and the fact that I started to search my history, my African American side of my family. My mother's side is French, and the other side is African American. And there was a hole in the South Carolina history of my tree, and so the North Carolina was great. Everything worked out there because they were supportive of the Britain during the Revolutionary War. So and so a lot of the records are still there and they were not destroyed. But South Carolina had a lot of, a lot of records were destroyed, and they were also a little bit behind the times and didn't have a lot of the records that North Carolina had. They were more advanced. And so there was this huge hole after my great granddad, Will Blue. There was this hole there of where did he come from? And where did his wife come from? My great grandmother. And I got with a genealogist, which is where the character comes from in my short film. And she was she was African American, and she specialized in African American genealogy in the South. And she helped me find who Will Blue's parents were, and grandparents and great grandparents. And so using the ancestry DNA spit test, we found out that I was related to 5 white men who served in the American Revolutionary War. And so that was super interesting. Like, I don't think my family knew that, before they died. I don't think anybody knew. Well, none of the living relatives I had talked to knew anything about where Will Blue and Mary Dudley had come from. Like, they didn't know. Nobody knew. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. How can we not know? Like, you can't walk around not knowing where you come from. Not having I feel it's important to know the full story. And I didn't have the full story, and it bothered me. And so anyway, so we figured out where they came from, and they were freedmen. They ended up being registered with the U.S. Freedmen's Bureau, the U.S. Freedmen's Bank, the Freedmen's Hospital. And that was like interesting. I thought, wow. And they went all the way back to the very first slave ships that came over in the 1600s, which I didn't know either. I had no idea, we don't really, you learn this in school, but it's not really that in depth. At least not when they taught it to me when I was in grade school or junior high. I didn't really get that much information. And so I thought, wow, this is very important information for people to know. And I went to, part of my journey was I kind of started circulating with these other people who were interested in genealogy. And I started going to conferences all over the country just to learn, like, how do you research and all this. And I was at this conference, and they were like, okay, turn on your phone app and you're going to end up matching with people. And I thought, well, these were mostly white people. And I thought, well, I'm not going to match with any of these people, and I ended up matching with this woman. She matched the exact, same ancestry. And she was a really nice lady. And it turns out that we were both descendants of King James V of Scotland. And, he wrote the slave Bible. He rewrote, I don't know if you know that he had rewritten the Bible so that it endorsed slavery.
Yeah.
You might have heard of that.
The King version of the Bible, right?
Yeah, and so that's who the people who came over from Scotland were descended from him, and they had enslaved the Africans in North Carolina and South Carolina and wherever. And she was a descendant on the white side of that, and I was descendant of the slaves for that. And so, we became friends, and we're still friends on Facebook. And that was something I thought, this is extraordinary. I have to do something with it. And so, and I'm a journalist for a living, but I thought an article is not going to do this justice. Like, you really have to see this, you have to see it. So anyway, I'll just end by saying that was a part of it. And then the genealogist helped me to find there's a church in Hamer, South Carolina, that my ancestors that were freed in 1870 on the Blue. It was Perginis Campbell, who married Virgil George Blue. She became a Blue, and they were freed in 1870. And they had gotten together with a bunch of other freed slaves, and they built a church in Hamer, South Carolina, which is in Dillon County, and it's still there. It's kind of dilapidated, but they're buried in the back. And that to me was just so precious.
Right. Yeah, that must be great. Sure.
It's so precious. I just found it last year. So I haven't gone yet. I need to go down there and take pictures of the graves and just I mean, I have pictures of the church because it's still owned by some of these very distant cousins of mine that I'm not in touch with. But that land is owned by them, and they own the church, but it's dilapidated. And from what I understand from the conversations I had with them, nobody has the money to renovate the church, and they don't want to sell the land. And so it's just there. But I'm like, great, I'm glad it's there, because maybe it should just be there. Maybe it should be a landmark. And, I want to get there and just take pictures of the graves and everything, and put that on Find a Grave. And that's an important part of history, and it's an important part of my family history that really, for me, strengthens me spiritually to know, because when you think of these people, like, okay, my ancestors were enslaved in the United States, but it's just kind of some weird, far off place for most people.
Yep.
But when you find their graves and the church that they built, you're like, oh my, these were real people.
Yeah.
And it just really marks you. It's like, wow, I know who I am now. I really, really deeply know who I am. And I wanted to share that with people, whoever wanted to see it, this journey, because a lot of people are Black and white are doing their ancestry these days. And it's interesting. There's always all kinds of surprises that you can find out, whether you're Black or white.
Yep. All right, listen, great. Thank you very much for joining us. And